right, welcome back to Rewatch or Return, the podcast where we put movies through the ultimate test across 10 universal categories to decide, does it call for a definite rewatch, a definite trip to the return bin, or does our subjectivity cause it to fall somewhere in between? We are finally back at it this week with the movie F1, or F1 the movie, I guess that's how it was titled when it came out. With that said, we're going to jump right into the Rotten Tomatoes plot synopsis. Dubbed the greatest that never was, Sonny Hayes, played by Brad Pitt, was Formula One's most promising phenom of the 1990s until an accident on the track nearly ended his career. 30 years later, he's a nomadic racer for hire when he's approached by his former teammate Ruben Cervantes, Javier Bardem, owner of the struggling Formula One team that is on the verge of collapse. Ruben convinces Sonny to come back to Formula One for one last shot at saving the team and being the best in the world. He'll drive alongside Joshua Pierce, Damson Idris, the team's hotshot rookie, intent on setting his own pace. But as the engines roar, Sonny's past catches up with him, and he finds that in Formula One, your teammate is your fiercest competition, and the road to redemption is not something that you can travel alone. All right. That's down. We're going to jump right into fast forward facts. Start your engines. This isn't just a racing film. It's a modern blockbuster that revved Formula One into mainstream movie culture. F1 the movie, marketed simply as F1, hit theaters in June 2025 and became one of the biggest sports films ever made, mixing real Grand Prix energy with Hollywood drama. Directed by Joseph Kosinski, fresh off of Top Gun Maverick, and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, seven-time F1 champion Lewis Hamilton and Brad Pitt's production team, the film had both pedigree and horsepower on its side. Brad Pitt stars as Sonny Hayes, a legendary Formula One driver whose career was derailed by a crash decades earlier. 30 years later, after hanging up his helmet, he's persuaded by his old teammate, turned team owner, to return to the pinnacle of motorsport, not just for glory, but to save the struggling APXGP team. Alongside him is a rising star Joshua Pierce, whose ambition and raw talent make him both a teammate and a rival on the track. The cast also includes Kerry Condon, Javier Bardem, and Tobias Menzies, and the movie blends scripted drama with real racing footage shot during actual Formula One Grand Prix, including events from the 2023 and 2024 seasons, giving the action an unprecedented level of authenticity. With a massive reported budget of $200 to $300 million, the film didn't just aim high, it crossed the finish line in style. F1 the movie grossed over $630 million worldwide, becoming not only the highest-grossing F1 film ever, but also the highest-grossing movie of Brad Pitt's career, and one of the biggest original Hollywood features of the year. Critics leaned positive, with reviewers praising the immersive racing sequences, Pitt's laid-back performance, and Kosinski's kinetic direction, though some fans pointed out that the storyline leans into familiar underdog tropes rather than pushing narrative boundaries. The movie also made awards noise. It earned multiple Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, a rare achievement for a racing sports drama, and the testament to how far its emotional and technical reach extended. Whether you're into fast cars, character redemption arcs, or blockbuster filmmaking, F1 the movie stands out as a film that married Hollywood star power with real-world speed, and helped introduce the thrill of Formula One to audiences who might have never even watched a single lap before. All right, with that down, we're going to jump right into what the critics said. This is where we look at the first top 10 critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. This film has a tomato meter of 82% and a popcorn meter score of 97%, so we're talking high scoring here. Jumping right into it, Nick James from Sight and Sound says, F1 loves blurring after images, retina stabbing lights, decal numbers, logos, stats, on-screen charts, night skies full of endless fireworks, and the polished gleam of stationary state-of-the-art racing cars. Peter Travers from the Travers Take says, all eyes on Brad Pitt as he takes Formula One for a spin and makes sure we never lose sight of what's human and striving behind the wheel. Wendy Ide from The Observer in the UK says, the cars may be stars, but the camera team, led by Top Gun Maverick cinematographer Claudio Miranda, are the wizards who keep the wheels turning. Sergio Burstein from Los Angeles Times says, Kaczynski has done things so well that he's managed to break down my until now impregnable defenses. Dwight Brown from DwightBrowning.com says F1, the movie, has the formula for success. It's got the fuel. Cruz must be smiling as Pitt takes the checkered flag. Coleman Spildy from Salon.com says F1, the movie, is not just a movie, it's a film constructed to look like entertainment, with all the bells and whistles ringing so loudly you'll forget that what you're watching has very little in the way of actual story. Okay. Jonathan Dean, The Times UK, says Pitt aside, the film is structured like a routine sports movie, a crashes and revivals narrative that takes in several international Grand Prix, while doing exactly what Bruckheimer promised in delivering the most realistic racing film yet. David Sims from The Atlantic says Sonny's quest to prove his doubters wrong resembles the arc of many sports dramas. But Kaczynski elevates that journey by capturing racing in all of its gorgeous, peculiar glory. There's never been a portrait of Formula One quite like it. And then I'm going to mess this up. Radayan Simonpalia from CBC Radio says, but really, we're all here for the race scenes. That's where the money's at in this movie. That's the stuff, and those scenes don't disappoint. And then Sarah Michelle Fetters, not to be confused with Sarah Michelle Gellar, I guess, from MovieFreak.com, says Pitt isn't exerting himself all that much from an emotionally complex standpoint, and while his raw physicality is impressive, Hayes remains too one-dimensionally dull to be a truly compelling figure worth all of the fuss. Okay. With that down, we're going to jump into First Time or 50th. Generally, this is a situation or a segment where we talk about, how many times you'd seen this movie. Kind of, is it your first time watching it, or is your 50th? Obviously, this is a newer film, so I haven't seen it 50 times by any means. I watched it one time and really, really, really enjoyed it. And then I sat down again and watched it once with my mom. So I've seen this movie twice. And then I kind of went through and watched some, a couple of... if you get on YouTube, you can watch people essentially watch a film for the first time, and it's like very condensed. So there's like a condensed version of like this person watches this film for the first time, and it's you get to see like someone else like experience a film, or someone else react to seeing something for the first time. Which is some movies I enjoy doing that, especially movies that I've seen a million times. I want to watch somebody else experience it for the first time. So I saw a couple of those, but in its entirety, as you're supposed to watch a film, I've watched this movie twice. But I'm pretty sure more than likely I'm going to purchase it and have it for my collection. I don't have much more to say about First Time or 50th. I only seen this movie 2 times. It's brand new. Just came out in June. Moving on to be continued. Would a sequel work for this film? And if there is a sequel, should there have been? My opinion is, well, because this is a brand new film, so obviously there's not a sequel to it. Now, I hear things in, the works of a potential, Days of Thunder crossover with this. I mean, I'm pretty sure both Jerry Bruckheimer productions. Cruz is obviously very familiar with working with Bruckheimer. Also, Joseph Kosinski, who was the director of this film, is the one that directed the new Top Gun film, and I'm told potentially working on a script for Days of Thunder. So I'm not sure exactly how all that's going on. I just hear rumors of a potential crossover between this, where Brad Pitt plays Sonny Hayes, and then Tom Cruise comes back and plays Cole Trickle, and somehow they either run into each other, or they're, I don't know. Anyway, I can see something like that being really cool, especially given the connected nature of all the Tom Cruise world and the Brad Pitt world and the Bruckheimer and the Kosinskis and all that kind of stuff. So I can definitely see that happening. But there's not a sequel to this. Should there be a sequel to it? I mean, I think the way that it ended, you clearly have a guy who is not in any way washed up or incapable of driving, or have lost a step and can't do it anymore. And they've painted him as a guy that is, not in it for necessarily the money, but in it for the love of racing and whatever he, gets out of being in the car and competing against the track or competing against time or competing against other people or whatever it may be. So I can definitely see either the film that they're talking about with that crossover film, or I can see a film where he comes back, for another season of racing, and it kind of picks up where it leaves off after he comes back, or maybe he comes back and he doesn't necessarily race, but he comes back and he's part of teaching another kid, helping another up and comer, or the guy that was in this one, and he's more of a mentor, strategic guy, because in much of this he's bringing the strategy and bringing the knowledge and all that. So I could see something like that too. Would I like to see either of those films? Yes. I think I would definitely like to see the Cruise crossover more. Like that has me like super interested if that ever comes about. I would like to see that more than I would like to see necessarily just a sequel to or a continuation of the story that was there. But either way, I would probably be more than happy to go see anything that continued the story, and I got to see more racing that was shot this way, and was as high energy and exciting as this film was to watch, particularly the racing bits. Okay, with that down, before we jump into the final segment, today's episode is brought to you by PrepStartsNow.com, your go-to spot for emergency and outdoor preparedness. If you're anything like me, you'd rather be prepared and not need it than need the essentials and not have them. From 72-hour emergency essentials to camping gear, car emergency essentials, multi-tools, first aid, and even home gardening supplies as you start growing some of your own food, they've got you covered for all of it, and the best part is, as a listener, you can use the promo code REWATCH to get a 15% site-wide discount, and you'll also be helping out the show as they give us a small reward for your business in the process. Head to prepstartsnow.com/discount/rewatch. That's prepstartsnow.com/discount/rewatch, or simply enter the code REWATCH at checkout and get prepared today. All right. With that down, let's do a quick recap on the film. Not going to go too much into detail, at least I don't think. But basically, you have this film starting off with Brad Pitt. He's in a race. He's in what looks like kind of more of a stock car style race. He's racing Daytona, I believe, and there's some Le Mans style thing where they're swapping out every so many hours, and it's a 24-hour race or something like that. So I don't know I'm not sure exactly what race it is and all that, but he's racing somewhere else. He apparently has continued racing and continued doing things and stayed in racing, even though his career ended in F1 decades earlier. But he decides it looks like he's going to wants to do this Baja racing and sand racing in the big Baja kind of buggies or whatever you want to call it that have the super suspension and all that. So he's headed there to do that. He's in a laundry mat of some sort, and basically his buddy comes in and is like, "Hey, I've basically run this team into the ground financially, and I need your help. Will you please come race with us?" So he goes out, and essentially what they say is he's auditioning them. So he goes out and determines whether or not he wants to race with them, and what you quickly see is he's the guy who knows the car or can communicate what's wrong with the car, what needs to be done for the car to make it better. You have a guy that's already on the team, Joshua Pierce, that is a good driver, but he can't communicate what's wrong. He can't recognize necessarily what's wrong with the car itself and like what needs to be updated or fixed or changed to better the car for the race. He just can race what he's given. So Pitt comes in and he tells them everything that needs to be changed and fixed, and you have this fun kind of comedic series of races and things as he first gets in, where he's kind of it looks like he's terrible at what he's doing. It looks like he's a terrible racer. It looks like he can't do anything right, but like in reality, he's doing all these things on purpose to try to better his teammate, to try to get his teammate a little bit further along the line, to get him to score a point, to get him to finish a race in the top 10. But it looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. And you realize along the way, like that's what's going on. He's not an idiot, and he's not a terrible racer. He's actually good at what he does, and he knows exactly what he's doing. But is something about him in this character that I really enjoy, which is like that kind of uh, knows it in and out and forwards and backwards, and he's kind of like this grizzled, veteran guy that really doesn't care. He's not in it for the image. He's not in it for anything. He's kind of tell it like it is and rough around the edges, and like I can appreciate that in a like a no nonsense dude of just. But he's also needs somebody to kind of push back on him just a little bit at times. But anyway, so you go through this period, you go through this series of things where like him and Joshua aren't getting along. They're fighting as teammates. He's Brad Pitt's character Sonny knows things have to be a certain way, and there's going to have to be a change, and they're going to have to change their approach, their strategy for racing if they're going to do anything at all. And he's trying to like instill that in the other racer, his teammate, and they're just like not getting along. Anyway, you go through this whole thing, and there's a couple of wrecks that are kind of like, oh no, you think somebody's badly hurt. And you have this period, it's very reminiscent of Days of Thunder in the sense of like, had the wreck, got to deal with this whole period of somebody having been, they're out of racing for a little bit because they're trying to get back into racing shape. They're trying to recover and all that. But as he gets back, there's a point when they start working together as a team and they start doing better as a team. And then things start to click. And by the final race, they are working as a team together. And essentially, Brad Pitt's plan is to like let this guy win this race. Like, I'm gonna do my job so to make sure that like you win this thing. But he goes into it planning on having Joshua, his teammate, win the race. And when it's all said and done, by the time the final lap hits, Joshua ends up in first place, but knocked out of the race by the second place guy. And so Brad Pitt, as Sonny Hayes, is left to kind of go into that sort of clear the mechanism mode. If you've ever seen For Love of the Game with Kevin Costner, where he just like can block out all the noise, and it's like essentially just like nobody else there. It's just him and the catcher, and he's pitching. Like that's kind of what the vibe is of what happens with Brad Pitt, where he explains like, I'm like essentially there's a moment that I can get to or get into sometimes where like I'm essentially just I'm flying, and I can see everything perfectly. I know exactly when to brake and when to gas, and like I can run the track perfectly. And so like that's kind of what happens. So there's like this moment of like he's racing at the end of the film. He's in first place. It's the last lap, and everything goes quiet, and he's just like, essentially flying. So it looks like they're not showing the car anywhere. It looks like they've got a camera that's like out in front of a car, it's filming from out in front of a car. So you see, you don't see any car in the picture. It's just 100% track and surrounding, and it is essentially looks like something is flying over the track. Then he wins the race, and quote unquote gets the girl that I wasn't gonna go into talking about their relationship too much, but and then by the end he's like, hey, I got something to do, and he leaves and he goes to I guess somewhere down in probably South America or Mexico, somewhere like that, and he races, gets into a Baja race finally, which is where he was headed at the beginning of the movie. Now, there's much more to that. That's just kind of a quick recap of what happened, but there's much more to the story. We'll get into that as we move into the final verdict, but right now, that's what we're going to do, heading into the final verdict, where we put the film to the test across 10 categories, scored on a scale from 1 to 5. And the scale looks like this. 10 to 20 is a return it, and maybe rewind it out of pity. 20 to 30 is return worthy unless you're feeling nostalgic. 30 to 40 is leans rewatch but debatable. 40 to 50 is a certified rewatchable film. And the scale or the category, whatever the numbers, the scoring numbers, we give it a 1 is poor, 2 is weak, 3 is fair, 4 is good, and 5 is excellent. Now these are labeled as poor or actively bad, annoying, or distracting. 2 is weak, flawed, or inconsistent. 3 is fair, adequate, but nothing special. 4 is good, solid, works well, but not iconic. And then 5 is excellent, outstanding, a strong highlight of the film. So there's a little bit, they kind of have their qualifiers as for what can fit into these areas, or But let's jump from the beginning here into story and plot. Is the narrative compelling and coherent? Does it still hold up on a rewatch? Um, I watched. I thought this one over. I read over some of the reviews that basically said that this had no story. This is not necessarily a super original story in that it's not something that, like, oh, we've never seen a story like this before. It's very reminiscent of many stories that we've seen as far as the arc goes. But there's definitely a story here. There's definitely a compelling story here. There's definitely multiple stories here and multiple story arcs and multiple character arcs. Um, so to say that there's like no story to this, to me, is just kind of somebody, in my opinion, being a little bit too, you know, pinky out, tea sipping about the way that they are looking at things, trying to be too fancy with their reviews. But you have the story of Sonny. You understand his past. You understand kind of like how he feels about what happened in his past with his F1 racing, and how he is sort of almost running away from it by running. He's running away from the past by running, by racing, which is like weird. Like, racing was what got him hurt. It was Formula One racing that he, they say kind of failed at, but he failed because there was a wreck, not because he wasn't great at it. And then he kind of, like, I guess, continues to race other races throughout the years and doing other things. But you have him dealing with that. There's this redemptive arc of him coming back. You see him, learn some things about himself. You see the arc that he has of his kind of this redemptive arc that he has. You get to see the character arc of the Joshua character, how he starts off as this kind of pompous punk kid, and then who thinks he's right about everything and nobody can tell him anything. And then as things go on, he learns that, like, he doesn't have all the answers, and there are people who have been there, done that, and can teach him things. And so he grows as a character to, by the end, he's a true teammate of Sonny. You have the character arc of the his buddy, who is the racing head, owns the team or whatever, and he's going through the whole process of, like, his team's falling apart and he's fixing to have to sell and he's lost all this money. And then by the time it's all said and done, like, they win the biggest race at the end of the season. There's the girl and her story of how she was some sort of aeronautical engineer or something like that, and is pulled into working with these race teams because it is such a team sport that it's not just all about the driver. It's about, developing the car and all of the, science side of running tests and designing things to have just the right amount of wind resistance, but not too much, and all the shape of things and the height and all that stuff of the car. So there's so much that goes into it. It's such a large team effort. But there's multiple stories that are, like, woven into this one story about people they're chasing after something, and as a team, they finally all together get this thing that they've been chasing after. They've been trying to prove for years. And so to say that there's, like, no story or no plot or no whatever, like, to me, that's silly, because it's a story that was definitely compelling to me and super enjoyable to me. So for story and plot, I gave it a 4 out of 5, because everybody has their own opinion, but I don't think those people really know what they're talking about, to be honest with you. Moving on to characters and performances. Are the characters memorable and well acted, or forgettable and flat? I really enjoyed the characters in this film. Brad Pitt played this exactly like I would hope to see him play this. He's a guy who doesn't show a lot of emotion, but you can also tell that he really cares about things, right? So someone was in one of those critics was talking about him being kind of like emotionless or whatever. Like, he wasn't crying and acting like a big baby about anything, but there was definitely emotion. Now, the emotion may have expressed itself in anger and irritation and whatever, but he wasn't an extremely flat character. I mean, the dude clearly cared about something, and but like that was expressed while also he was this very like cool and calm person on the outside most of the time, which like I can relate to because I'm not really a super expressive person myself. I'm a pretty kind of like even keel, like straight face, don't show a lot of emotion, don't express a whole lot generally. While I definitely feel things inside for sure. So I enjoyed Pitt's portrayal of this character. I think that um, the actor who played Joshua Pierce did a great job of making you really, really, really annoyed and irritated at him at first for that punk kid that he plays. But then, like, he does a good job of, like, becoming the person who is becoming the young person who realizes they don't have all the answers and becoming a likable character, a likable partner to Sonny. Like, so I enjoyed his performance. I enjoyed um, Javier Bardem. Not that he had some major part, but he was definitely like I bought their friendship. I bought his care for Sonny. I enjoyed the girl that was, doing most of the testing and car building and all that. Like I really enjoyed her character. I enjoyed her interaction with Sonny. I enjoyed their kind of dynamic that they had. There was not a situation in the movie where I was like disappointed with an actor or disappointed with the character or disappointed with the portrayal and like I don't buy this or whatever. So I thought the characters and performances were solid. Nothing like super iconic or anything like that to me, but I think they were solid and good. And so for characters and performances, I am giving it a 4 out of 5. Moving to pacing and entertainment value. Were you entertained the whole time? Did the movie keep your attention? Does it feel too slow, too rushed, or just right? Um, I think that the movie was paced really well. I think the movie was very entertaining. I was entertained the whole time for sure, especially the first time I watched it. Things are a little different when you watch a movie like this and you aren't sure what's going to happen. But when you're chasing after something, when a movie is about the chase for the thing, um, the first time you watch it with not knowing how it's going to go or not knowing what's going to happen, that's you can watch a different way and you feel it a different way and you have different. It's a whole different experience. But I was entertained the whole time. Both times I watched it, I felt it was not quite as uh, not quite as quickly paced the second time I watched it as it felt like it was the first time. No, I don't mean rushed. It just felt a little the pace of the film um, from particular, that kind of up and down. You can't stay on the ceiling the whole time, and you can't stay on the floor. But like the up and down movement throughout the film felt a little bit slower than what I remembered it the first time watching it, and I think most of it was because like I remember the action scenes so much that like as I watched the film the second time, I was like ready for the next race scene, excited for the next race scene because I already knew the story and that side of things. So like the excitement for me was the races. Um, anyway, so I was entertained the whole time, both times I watched it. It definitely kept my attention. It doesn't feel too slow. I don't think it's too rushed. I think it's well done. And so pacing and entertainment value, I think it's better than good. I think it's a super entertaining film. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Moving along to dialogue and quotability. Are there iconic or memorable lines? Do you still quote it? Does the dialogue feel natural or cringy? Um, I think the dialogue is solid in this. It doesn't feel. There are some things I suppose that you could say, um, are quotable lines or things, whatever. But it would like to me, it wouldn't. I don't think they're like culturally memorable in that like everybody's going to know what you're talking about when you say it. But there are definitely lines from this movie where like if you and somebody else like the movie, there are some things from the movie that you know, you could hold on to and say to each other in certain moments, jokingly or whatever. But I don't think that this is like one of those things where you can say, you know, you can't handle the truth and somebody know what you mean. So I don't think that there's like that level of memorable or iconic lines or anything like that. And I don't think people are necessarily going to be quoting this film. But I don't think the dialogue feels cringy by any means. I think it feels natural. I enjoy the banter, the back and forth, the, you know, all the things. So I gave this for dialogue and quotability a 4 out of 5 and called it good. Next is soundtrack and score. Does the music enhance the film or date it? Does it elevate the emotional tone of the film or feel out of place? Is it iconic or generic? I think the soundtrack and score is fantastic, but also I don't think it's iconic. It's a Hans Zimmer score. There's some great music choices. There's a John Mayer. Why can I not think of the? Why can I not think of the redheaded Irish guy? Um, it's not ringing a bell right now. Maybe it'll ring a bell before I'm done saying what I'm going to say about it. But there is an original song by John Mayer who plays guitar. He doesn't sing any, and then the redheaded Irish guy that plays pop tunes that's so popular that is like completely I'm totally blanking on him right now, and I hope it comes to me. But anyway, the Hans Zimmer score is solid, but I don't think it's like super iconic. I don't. There's not any particular melodies or things that pops out and that I carried home with me that I'm humming that I couldn't even tell you like if a right now I couldn't tell you a melody or a series of notes or anything that were part of the film score. But I will say that it was a very intense and fitting and well done film score, and then the choices for I'm looking this up. I can't stand if you're watching right now, it's Ed Sheeran. I had to look it up for a second. So it's Ed Sheeran singing. There's the score is great and fitting, not iconic. Well done, Hans Zimmer, for doing the job. But also, this wasn't like one of your iconic, gonna be on a compilation of film scores kind of thing. But there was also some really solid music choices that I enjoyed, that I could appreciate, that lifted the vibe of the movie and were exciting. But like I said, there was one song in particular that was written and performed by John Mayer and Ed Sheeran, and that was basically the song that was at the end of the movie that went out with the credits. But musically, score and soundtrack choice, like I think it was well done, not iconic but good. So I'm giving soundtrack and score also a 4 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style. Is it visually engaging or stylish, regardless of effects budget or genre? Do the camera work and effects still impress, or do they look dated or clunky? Well, this, just like with Top Gun Maverick, which we haven't even done on here, more than likely will at some point. This is a film that they went out of their way to shoot things as realistically and practically and like on location, real things, real things doing real things, as minimal amount. There's obviously not a film out there. There's not a film out there that like doesn't have CG in it anymore. Whether even if it's like removing something that's in the picture or in the frame that we don't want there, like everything has some level of special effects in it, if you want to call it that. But what they did with this and choosing to go to these particular races and film real races, real race cars, real drivers doing real things. I don't know exactly how they shot all of the actors in the cars stuff. So some of that might have been like on a volume. I haven't looked into it enough to know exactly how they did that, because there's clearly stuff that looks like Brad Pitt in a car racing and the other guy in the car racing, but I know that they weren't in those cars, at least not driving to that extent. Now they may have. I saw a video of Brad Pitt driving a F1 a Formula One car and being kind of taught how to do that later on for a YouTube video that wasn't related to the film necessarily, but it was kind of like promotion for the film. But I don't think in any way that they had Brad Pitt out there, doing 200 mile an hour in an F1 car. So I don't know how they shot his stuff to make it look real. As far as that goes, could have been some plates and some blue screen stuff, and him in a car with a sound. It could have been soundstage style with a volume. It could have been a soundstage style thing with a blue screen or green screen situation and a plate in the background and lighting to match the stuff happening on the car. So who knows? I don't. I'm not going to get into trying to say that I do, but it was incredibly well done, very buyable of its realism, very engaging, very stylish in the way that it was shot. In that there, you're not seeing this kind of stuff regularly. To choose to fit cars with certain cameras, just like they did in Top Gun Maverick, to choose to put certain cameras mounted in certain places that they haven't done before, that they haven't attempted before, and to get shots and to get angles and get things that we've not seen before in like racing movies was awesome. So there was nothing about this film that I watched and was like, oh, it's a little wonky, or man, like that's clearly fake, or there's no way that that's real, or anything like that. I I didn't catch anything like that watching it. The camera work's fantastic. It's very impressive. I think it's going to hold up forever and ever and ever. So, for cinematography and visual style, I give this one a 5 out of 5. Now, on to originality and creativity. Does the film feel fresh and inspired or like something you've seen 100 times? Was the film groundbreaking or formulaic? Does it bring something unique? The story itself, I don't think, is necessarily super fresh and inspired. And like, I would say similar style story arcs and similar style stories, I've probably seen 100 times. But with that said, there is a groundbreaking nature to the originality and creativity behind how they shot the film. And so it does bring something unique in that respect. So it's not super original and creative. Not saying that it's a bad story. It's just not, from a story perspective, it's not super original and creative. It's just you did a good, like you wrote a compelling story that's similar to stories that we've seen and heard before, but like you killed it on the visuals. So like, given that, giving what I would say is not formulaic and is groundbreaking in the way the film was made and the uniqueness of that, I am going to put originality and creativity at 3.5 out of 5. And I think like I probably would have put it higher, like at a 4.5 out of 5, but I think like the fact that the story itself is like such a common kind of story, uh, like I left it at a 3.5 out of 5. I kind of feel right now, I feel like that's low, to be honest with you. I kind of want to give it a 4, but I'm not. I don't know. Should I give it a 4? Should I up this to a 4? Um, I think, you know I think I'm going to. Like I looked down and saw that I had given this a 3.5 after saying everything. I was expecting to look down after saying everything that I just said and see a 4. See that I had given it a 4, and I see that I had given it a 3.5 out of 5. And the reality is, when I go through here and score this before I do this, I don't think about it near as much. Like me going through and actually talking through things for this particular you know, podcast situation, I think about these far more, and I almost talk myself into different scores once I start talking on it. So I'm gonna up this to a 4 out of 5 and say, because of the, like, I think if you gave it a better story, it could be a 5, but because the story is a more generic story, uh, I'm gonna give it a 4. But the visuals, the originality and creativity on the visual side of things, I think ups it. So I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. And moving on to theme and message, is there a deeper takeaway, and does it explore ideas that resonate today? I mean, like all of these, a lot of times I feel like, I don't know, like I don't think this film's necessarily made to be like to make a statement or to have a message or anything, but like I think there is, the film says a few things in, um, by the way of showing that it's not all about, a lot of times it's how good you are at something. It's not necessarily or how much, like, how much wisdom and experience you can bring to something versus the hot new cool whatever, you know. You may be really good at something, but somebody who's more wise than you could maybe do something even better than you can, because your ability is stifled by your lack of wisdom. And so, like, there's a little of that in this. There's a little bit of that, like, don't ever stop. If you have a, you know, if there's something that you want to do, and you feel like you can, like, don't stop chasing that thing. Maybe there's a little bit of that, but I mean, there's not a super messagey thing in this film that I would say. So I'm just going to give this theme and message like a 3 out of 5 and say it's like fair for theme and messaging. It's got some solid messages in it, but there's not really a message to it. Moving on to cringe factor. Are there any jokes, cheesy, bad effects, outdated jokes, whatever, that aren't funny? Um, like moments that aren't going to age well or anything like that. Like, I don't feel like there was anything in this film that was cringy at all, really. I think everything was fitting for what it was trying to be. And this is a one of few films that I've just said, like, hey, there's not, like, I'm trying to think about some cringy stuff. Maybe in the moment, maybe if I sat and watched it again, looking particularly for something cringy, maybe I would find something. But I'm not. I'm like, nothing's coming to mind. Um, I don't recall feeling any cringe about this film, and so I'm giving this a 5 out of 5 on the cringe factor. How about that? Moving on to nostalgia and rewatchability. Does it hold up to your memory of it? You know, that's not necessarily fitting, but that's essentially what this is about. Is it rewatchable, or how does nostalgia affect things? Does it hold up to your memory of it? Does it still matter today? Is it timeless? Has it aged poorly? Does a rewatch ruin the magic? Would you honestly watch it again? It's not old enough to like really hold up to a memory or whatever, but from the first watch to the second, I would say I definitely enjoyed watching it more the first time I watched it. But that's because it was the first time I watched it. That's a whole, like, that's your first time experience. So I don't think that, like, it doesn't hold up. It just was not. It wasn't the same experience watching it the second time. But that's a given for what for the situation. Does it still matter today? Like, I think that this is the film going to be some iconic, timeless film. Probably not. I think, like, if you go on and you make a sequel and you have this like Days of Thunder F1 crossover kind of thing, like, then then that could like drag this into sort of this like iconic thing, because it's dragging it into this world of nostalgia. But I don't think this is like going to be some iconic film. It's just a really solid film that's fun to watch, and I think like people are going to go back to it. People are going to buy it. It's going to be one of like a solid film, but it's not going to be some timeless iconic thing. It's not going to age poorly. Um, like, the magic that it has is not going to be lost. and I definitely think it's going to be a it's a rewatchable film to me, and I think it's going to be a movie that like plenty of people are going to enjoy sitting down and watching just for the fun of the way it was shot, the races, the excitement, the sound design, and all that stuff. So for nostalgia and rewatchability, just given uh, what I just said, it may be a high score for some people, but for me, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 and saying like it's from a rewatchability perspective. For me, it's good. So I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for nostalgia and rewatchability. And then we're gonna have a bonus little category here, which is not always the case, but this is a bonus category that I enjoy. Could a theme park ride based on this film make sense? And if so, what kind of ride would it likely be? I've thought about this. So if you can go get into a ride that makes you feel like you're in a spaceship taking off and flying into space with the G force and all that. And granted, you're in a centrifuge, so like things are set up different. Just simply giving you G force versus making you feel like you're in an F1 car, two totally different things. But I was thinking how if you could like do it right, if you had the proper technology and the proper engineering and they figured it out, you could make an F1 ride incredibly fun. And if you watch this movie, you can. There's a combination of things that I thought about. If you watch this movie, they are in the simulator, right? It's more volume style. They're in a partial car. They're racing on a track that's virtual, but it's the tracks that they're familiar racing. So if you could combine something like that with, if you've ever ridden, what is it called, Smuggler's Run, the Millennium Falcon ride at either of the Eastern or Western American Disney parks in the Star Wars area. If you've ever ridden that ride, it's a gaming system that they're using to put you in the ride. So you're sitting in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, and you're piloting, you're doing things, you're pressing buttons, you're steering and all that. However, you can only steer so much. It'll only let you go so far over to where it won't let you go anymore, because it has to get you to a particular destination. It has to have you do a particular thing to continue the story and have it all work right. So while you are controlling everything, you can only kind of get so far off track or get so far out of where you're supposed to be going before it like kind of like won't let you go anymore. And it's not super restrictive. It just does a really good job of like giving you these boundaries of keeping you on track with things. And so like I thought if you could take something like that and combine it with something like the simulator that they're in, or the whatever you want to call it in the movie. And I think like you would have to do it in a way where you'd have to have like a dual seater and two people doing, I don't know, you'd have to make it more where maybe it wouldn't be a theme park ride, but it's just like maybe like a mall style ride, or one of those things where like you pay 40 $50 to like race for real in a situation. So I don't know, maybe not theme park, but something else. But like I can totally see a like consumer style racing game if they could figure out like how to implement G-force into something like that, to where you can like feel a little bit of pull against yourself and a little bit of whatever on top of being able to drive, but not being able to like and just completely wreck your car, or however. I think there's a way to do all that. Maybe we're not there yet technology wise, but like I think there's a way to do all that. And I love theme parks and theme park rides and that kind of stuff. So like in my brain, I've been kicking around how would that be possible. I think it is possible with the right, the right heads, the right minds, the right attempt and approach for it. But I would love to see something like that happen one day, because I think it'd be really cool to be able to like get into a, quote unquote, get into a F1 car and experience in some shape, form, or fashion driving an F1 car on an F1 track, and then like not have to deal with the the consequences of potential death in the situation. So, yeah, like I think that would be cool. I would love to see something like that. You can let me know maybe what you think if you had any ideas of something like that. But um, now we're going to tally things up and see where this one fell on the verdict scale. So story and plot got a 4 out of 5. Characters and performances got a 4 out of 5. Pacing and entertainment value got a 4.5 out of 5. Dialogue and quotability got a 4 out of 5. Soundtrack and score got a 4 out of 5. Cinematography and visual style got a 4 or a 5 out of 5. Originality and creativity got a 4 out of 5. Theme and message got a 3 out of 5. Cringe factor a 5 out of 5. Nostalgia and rewatchability a 4 out of 5. Bringing this total for me and my personal score to 41.5 out of 50, meaning that this one does fall on the certified rewatchable part of the scale from 40 to 50, which is exactly how I feel about it. And if looking at this, 41.5 out of 50, if you just like double that to get, a percentage out of 100, you're looking at what, 83. So what was the score for the tomato meter? The tomato meter was 82%. So if you take, my 41 out of 50 and you make that 83 out of 100, then I guess my feelings was right there at 82%, 83%, whatever, with how the critics felt about this movie in total. But that's going to be all for this episode. And again, like, you may hate this movie, you may love this movie, but the fun thing about this is, like, this is my score, and you can do your own score, and it's all subjective. That's why I love movies. But now I am not entirely set up in my new place as far as the way that I expect to get things and all that. But I know there's been a break here from the last episode. There's been a couple of months. But I am back at it now, planning on being back at this on a weekly basis. And I have plans on bringing in some other stuff as far as soundtrack, like completely soundtrack focused stuff. So like we'll do the same kind of things with different categories and 100% focus on movie soundtracks with a buddy of mine who's a getting his doctorate in musical things, who can speak into that stuff far better than I can. But we're back, and you'll see some probably changes visually on what I look like here and how things look, but we're getting there, and I am appreciative of anybody who is still here and still wanting to watch things as we move forward. But Rewatch or Return is back after a break. And that's going to be the end of this episode. I will see you next week.